You know that annoying thing smoke does at a campfire. You move left, it follows you. You move right, it follows you. You sit there coughing, waving your hand in front of your face, wondering why the smoke has personally chosen you as its enemy. Now imagine that same scene, except it is not a weekend camping trip. It is tens of thousands of years ago. There is no flashlight, no lighter, no grocery store, no emergency room. Just a group of humans sitting around a fire in the dark, trying to stay warm, trying not to become dinner, breathing in whatever that fire is sending into the air. And at some point, one of them notices something strange. Some smoke just burns your eyes. Some smoke makes you cough. But some smoke changes the way you feel. Maybe it makes the body relax. Maybe it makes fear feel farther away. Maybe it makes the night feel less terrifying. Maybe it makes the stories around the fire feel bigger than stories. And once a human notices that, the next question is almost guaranteed. What happens if we do it again? That is where the story of smoking really begins. Not with cigarettes, not with cigars, not with a stressed out guy outside a gas station. Not even with tobacco, at least not at first. The real story starts much earlier, with fire, curiosity, plants, medicine, ritual. And one of the strangest things about human beings, we do not just want to survive reality. We keep looking for ways to change how reality feels. So when did ancient humans start smoking? The honest answer is messy. The evidence says one thing. Human behavior says another. And somewhere between the two is a story much older than most people realize. To understand it, you have to start with fire. Because before anyone could smoke anything on purpose, humans had to first become the kind of animal that could sit beside flames without running away. And that happened very, very early. Some of the strongest evidence for controlled fire use comes from places like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, where researchers found burned plant material and charred bone dating back roughly 1 million years. That is so old it does not even belong fully to us. Homo sapiens were not around yet. This was the world of earlier humans, like Homo erectus, people with heavy brows, tough bodies, smaller brains than ours, and apparently enough sense to realize that fire was not just danger, it was power. Fire changed everything. It gave warmth. It gave light. It scared off predators. It made food softer, safer, and easier to digest. It turned night from a time of helpless darkness into a place where people could gather. But fire also did one thing nobody could avoid. It made smoke. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lived in smoke. They cooked in it, slept near it, told stories through it, raised children beside it. Their clothes, hair, skin, shelters, tools, and lungs all would have carried the smell of the fire. And unlike us, they could not step away into an air-conditioned room. They could not open a window, check an air purifier, or complain that the smoke alarm was too sensitive. Smoke was part of being human. But here is where it gets interesting. Not all smoke is the same. Burn dry wood, you get one kind of smoke. Burn damp grass, another. Burn certain leaves, roots, seeds, or flowers, and the smoke can contain chemicals that affect the body and brain. Some plants are irritating. Some are poisonous, some are calming, some are stimulating, and some are psychoactive, meaning they can change perception, mood, fear, pain, hunger, memory, or the feeling of time passing. Ancient people did not know the word psychoactive. They did not know what receptors were. They did not know chemistry, but they did know experience. If a certain plant made the fire smell pleasant, they remembered it. If a certain smoke made insects stay away, they remembered it. If a certain smoke made pain feel lighter, they remembered it. And if a certain smoke made the whole group feel strange, quiet, connected, or full of visions, they definitely remembered that. This is probably how smoking began for many human groups, not as an invention but as an accident that became a pattern. A plant falls into the fire. The smoke changes. Someone notices. Next time, someone puts that plant into the fire on purpose. That tiny moment, the decision to repeat an effect, is one of the most human things imaginable, because animals can stumble into something. Humans turn it into a ritual. Now, the difficult part is proving it. Archaeology is great at preserving stone. It is terrible at preserving smoke. A stone knife can survive for 1 million years. A burnt leaf cannot. A wooden pipe can rot away. A bundle of dried herbs can disappear completely. Even ashes can mix into the ground until there is almost nothing left to test. So when we ask, when did humans first smoke? We are really asking, What is the oldest evidence that survived? And that is a very different question. One of the most fascinating pieces of evidence comes from North America. At a site in the Great Salt Lake Desert in Utah, archaeologists found tobacco seeds in an ancient hearth dating back about 12,000 years. That is long before cigarettes, long before modern farming, long before cities in the Americas. Now, that does not prove someone was smoking tobacco the way people later smoked pipes. A hearth is not a cigarette, but it does show that very early people were already bringing tobacco into the fire area. They were interacting with it. They were not ignoring it. And that matters because tobacco is not just any plant. It contains nicotine, a powerful stimulant that affects attention, mood, and reward. Anyone who discovered its effects would not need a lab to understand that something was happening. The body would tell them. In the Americas, tobacco became one of the most important sacred plants in human history. Many indigenous cultures used it not as a casual habit, but as a spiritual tool. It was connected to healing, prayer, agreements, respect, and communication with the unseen world. Smoke was not just smoke. It was a carrier. It rose upward. It disappeared into the sky. It felt like a bridge between the visible and the invisible. That is easy to overlook today because modern smoking has been flattened into something ordinary and commercial. But in many ancient cultures, inhaling smoke was not like taking a break. It was an event. It had rules. It had meaning. It belonged to a place, a moment, a ceremony. And tobacco was only one part of the story. In Central Asia, archaeologists found evidence of cannabis being burned in ritual settings around 2,500 years ago. At high mountain burial sites in the Pamir region, researchers discovered wooden braziers and heated stones with cannabis residue. Even more interesting, the cannabis appears to have contained higher levels of THC than ordinary wild plants. In plain English, people were not just burning random weeds. They seemed to have selected plants that had stronger effects. That tells us something important. By that point, humans were not merely discovering psychoactive smoke by accident. They were choosing it, preparing it, and placing it inside rituals. Ancient writers noticed this too. The Greek historian Herodotus described steppe nomads using hemp smoke in enclosed spaces. For a long time, people wondered whether he was exaggerating. Then archaeology began finding objects that matched the basic description: heated stones, braziers, hemp residue, which means the ancient reports were not just weird stories. They were glimpses into a real practice. And if people were doing this too, 500 years ago in Central Asia, and people were using tobacco thousands of years ago in the Americas, and people everywhere had fire long before that, then the bigger question becomes obvious. How far back does this really go? We may never know. But there is a strong reason to believe the desire behind smoking is extremely old. Humans are not the only animals that seek altered states. Many animals interact with substances that affect their behavior. Some eat fermented fruit. Some seek out plants that change their body chemistry. Some seem to return to those substances again and again. Human beings took that tendency and made it cultural. We fermented drinks. We brewed teas. We chewed leaves. We ate mushrooms. We inhaled vapors. We burned plants. We created ceremonies around the changing of consciousness. Across the world, in cultures that had no contact with each other, people found ways to alter the mind. That is not a coincidence. It suggests that humans have always been curious about the borders of ordinary experience. What happens when pain changes? What happens when fear softens? What happens when dreams appear while you are awake? What happens when a whole group experiences something strange together? That last question may be the most important one, because smoking was rarely just personal. In ancient life, it was often shared. Picture a small group sitting around a fire. The night is cold. The world beyond the firelight is dangerous. Everyone depends on everyone else. Trust is not optional. If the group falls apart, people die. Now add a shared ritual. Everyone breathes the same smoke. Everyone becomes quieter or more alert or more dreamlike. The group begins to feel one thing together. Modern people might call that a drug experience. Ancient people may have understood it as medicine, ceremony, or contact with spirits, but socially it did something powerful. It bonded people. Shared rituals make groups feel closer. They create memory. They turn ordinary time into special time. They make people feel they have passed through something together. That is why smoke shows up again and again in healing, religion, funerals, blessings, purification, and storytelling. Smoke is perfect for symbolism. It is visible but impossible to hold. It rises but disappears. It comes from matter but becomes air. It feels like something leaving one world and entering another. No wonder humans gave it meaning. But ancient smoking was not only spiritual, it was also medical. This sounds strange to modern ears because we now know how harmful inhaling smoke can be, especially when it is frequent and concentrated. But ancient medicine worked with the tools it had, and inhalation made a kind of practical sense. The lungs absorb substances quickly. If a plant could open airways, dull pain, calm the body, or affect the senses, inhaling its vapor or smoke could deliver those effects fast. Ancient medical traditions in Egypt, Greece, India, China, and elsewhere used herbal smoke or vapor in different ways. Some treatments involved fumigation. Some involved breathing the fumes of heated plants. Some used pipes or tubes to direct smoke toward the body. Were all of these treatments safe? No. Were all of them effective? Definitely not. But some plants do contain real active compounds, and in a world without antibiotics, modern surgery, or clean hospitals, it helps sometimes, was enough to keep a practice alive. Ancient people were not stupid. They were experimenting, they watched, they tested, they remembered, they passed it on. That is how most knowledge worked for most of human history. Not written papers, not classrooms, not search engines, just memory, repetition, survival, and someone saying, use this plant, not that one. Then came tobacco's transformation. When Europeans reached the Americas, they encountered tobacco use and were fascinated by it. They saw indigenous people smoking, inhaling, carrying, offering and using tobacco in ceremonies. To Europeans, it seemed exotic and strange. Then very quickly it became irresistible. Tobacco moved across the Atlantic and spread through Europe with shocking speed. What had been sacred in one context became fashionable in another, then profitable, then global. Over time, the plant was pulled out of ritual and pushed into commerce. Pipes, snuff, cigars, and eventually cigarettes turned tobacco into a daily habit for millions. Then industry did what industry often does. It made the habit cheaper, faster, stronger, and easier to repeat. The cigarette changed everything. It removed the ceremony, removed the waiting, removed the preparation, removed the group meaning. It turned smoke into a product designed for constant use. That is the part of the story where ancient practice and modern addiction split completely. A healer burning plants in a ritual and a company selling cigarettes by the billion are not the same thing. One belonged to culture. The other belonged to profit. And that difference matters, because when people ask, did ancient humans smoke? The answer is not just yes or no. It depends what we mean. Did ancient humans smoke cigarettes? No. Did they smoke tobacco in the modern commercial sense? No. Did they inhale plant smoke deliberately for ritual, medicine, pleasure, bonding, or altered states? Almost certainly, yes. At least in some places. At least by 12,000 years ago for tobacco-related fire use in North America. At least by 2,500 years ago for ritual cannabis burning in Central Asia, and probably much earlier in forms that left no trace. The behavior may be as old as the moment humans first understood that smoke could do more than sting the eyes. That is what makes this story so strange. Smoking is not one invention. It is many discoveries made in many places by many people who all noticed the same basic thing: plants can change us. Fire can release the plant. Breath can carry it into the body, and the mind can become different. Sometimes that difference was treated as healing, sometimes as pleasure, sometimes as danger, sometimes as contact with the spirit world, but it was never meaningless. For ancient humans, smoke was not background. It was part of life. It was warmth, food, protection, medicine, prayer, memory, and mystery all at once. Today, we mostly meet smoke in warnings. We know the damage it can do. We know modern smoking is dangerous. We know the cigarette industry turned an ancient human curiosity into one of the deadliest consumer products ever made. But before all of that, before ads, filters, lighters, factories, warning labels, and hospital scans, there was just a fire, a small circle of humans, a plant placed into the flames, a different smell in the air, Someone breathing in, someone feeling something change, and then someone remembering. That may be the real beginning of smoking, not a product, not a habit, not even a vice. A discovery. A risky, strange, very human discovery made by people staring into firelight, trying to understand what the world could do to the body, and what the body could do with the world. So the next time you sit near a campfire and the smoke turns toward you, remember this. For most of human history, that smoke was not just an annoyance. It was one of the first mysteries we ever breathed in.